Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Emily Moyer and Robert Phoenix is with me and we are at number 25, Robert. Can you believe it?
Wow, 25. That's like, what is that, like the bronze anniversary or copper anniversary or something like that?
Maybe it's the ruthenium anniversary. All of a sudden I'm getting all these ads under YouTube videos for ruthenium coins with pictures of Donald Trump on them.
Really?
Yeah. So maybe
I get ads for some guy that used to teach multi-level digital marketing at San Diego State.
interesting.
Yes.
Laura looked it up and 25 is the silver anniversary.
Silver anniversary. Oh, 50 is gold, right? 50
Yeah.
is gold.
So we got right that. Yeah, so 25.
This is our silver anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Well, happy anniversary.
Well,
If I'd have known, I'd have brought you something.
I'll collect when I see you later this month or early next month. Yes, I'll collect.
Yes, you will.
All right. So there's of course an endless amount of things going on, but I've missed your show the last couple of days, so I don't know what you've been tracking. I've been super duper busy. What's been on your mind?
Well, I'm watching the slow creep of medical fascism from Australia and New Zealand to Hawaii, which is quite disturbing.
The Hawaii thing, like I heard about that, but I just read one article. So this is about the checkpoint on the highway. That shit's crazy. The weirdest thing is the ritual of them having to drive the entire length of that highway then before being able to turn around and go home.
That's right. That's right.
That's the fucking weirdest part.
Yeah, and in anticipation of people not being very happy about what's going on there, they put up all these barricades around the State House in Hawaii. So they're basically preparing to deal with a siege, right? And this is the mentality that is being, I think, that's evolving right now. And it's pretty frightening. You know, this whole idea that Trump called a state of emergency on March, I think it was March 19th, and it can only last for 6 months. So theoretically, that state of emergency has to be disabled and or renewed on the 19th of September.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So what are they going to do? Are they just going to just sort of shuffle along and just kind of keep the thing going? Will they rescind the state of emergency? Will they have another emergency that will allow them to kind of just, re-up their subscription? So this will be an interesting kind of point in time to keep an eye on. It's going to be the second week in September. So I would urge people to.
There's a couple of other things I'm tracking that week, right? So, well, first of all, the Hawaii thing, I imagine right now, like, sure, like you can think of it like, oh, like if we're in a crappy situation, it would be great to be in Hawaii and just enjoy the nature and blah, 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 blah. But that's terrifying to be out on an island, thousands of miles away from any other place. There's no place for people to go. And they're just basically, so now if you don't want to have a COVID test, you're just trapped in your home, walking from your house to the corner market to get whatever you need. And that's pretty much it. That's kind of terrifying. It's very terrifying. That's it's not like people from other states can come in to support them or help them protest or help them try and defend anything. So that's actually really, and it's just really equally as close to other countries, right? That could take advantage of this situation as well. It's very weird. That's disturbing. As far as what you said about September 19th, I hadn't thought about that. I'm tracking a couple of other things for that same week. The first thing I heard was that ad busters, who are the people who started Occupy Wall Street, put out a call for people to siege the White House for 50 days before the election starting September 17th. And then Jeff told me that Catherine Austin Fitts said that she's received inside information from a variety of people, including certain corporations and agencies and whatever, that they're expecting some kind of shutdown or collapse or something on September 16th. So I thought the timing of those two possible things back to back is interesting. So I don't know if it would be the one or the other, or one causes the other, or both of them are sort of either in lead up to or in response to the thing you're talking about, right? But that week is loaded. And then also there's a lot of coding of 923 that I've been seeing people talk about in their articles and videos as well. So that week, that's 1 week right there, from the 16th to the 23rd. I think that, like, if shit's going to go off, that's when it's going to go off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's been a lot of talk about, asteroids, asteroid stuff right around that time. I mean, I'm not sure how much I buy into the whole asteroid thing. I think, they could manufacture just about anything in our reality and make it look like an asteroid. Or I do think at some point we're probably going to have to deal with the alien thing, and it's probably going to be sooner rather than later. And I think that's probably going to be sort of the next level stuff, and whatever that is, whatever that's going to be.
I've seen coding for some of that stuff too. So a few weeks back, there was an article about somehow an asteroid that NASA missed and all the other scientists missed was the closest passing asteroid ever or something to Earth, right? Or in modern history. And they somehow, nobody knew about it till it had already passed. So that's putting the idea out there that there could be a surprise asteroid, right? That they wouldn't have been able to see coming. So that, and then I've seen, just the other day, there was an article, and I forwarded it to my dad as sort of an inside joke, but there was an article that said that, where is it? Let me see. I wanted to make sure I give the right name, so if people want to look at it, they can. Where is it? Here, it was, alien, so UFO spotting has replaced bird watching as the pandemic obsession. Right, so there's that. And then, I've like different people like Shane the Runer, he's talked about like has information or has heard lots of stuff about the idea that something that is kind of like a Baluchina or whatever, right? Something that would light up the sky, maybe coming in, and that would, because of what it does to the sky, they're no longer going to be able to hide all the other things that are up there. You know what I mean? Maybe other structures, kind of things that have been obfuscated by chemtrails or, other screening of the sky or whatnot. So yeah, there's coding for all this kind of stuff that you're talking about.
Yeah, I read a message on a message board. It's some guy has a girlfriend who's an insider, and it seemed like a very detailed and pretty, I don't know how valid it was, but it seemed pretty detailed, and the way that he described everything around like the actual information, how she got it out, all the stuff, it seemed pretty, I don't know, plausible on some level. Anyway, the information is that there's this thing in this upper atmosphere, and they have tried to hit it. First, I think they sent a hypersonic missile at it, and it just moved aside very easily. And then they tried to hit it with a particle beam, and then it moved aside again very easily. So the scuttlebutt that was a part of this message, like it was sort of like intel, was that this thing is possibly like a scout ship. And that there's something behind it that's massive, like really massive. And
could be what Shane's talking about.
Yeah, we've been talking about and looking at what possibly could be Nibiru or Planet X, and who knows? It could be a complete fake. Who knows? But I think that's going to be probably the next level. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Because we're really set up, at least in this country. It's starting to look like even other parts of the world, like this massive rally they had in Germany.
Yeah.
It's kind of mind blowing. And even in London, apparently they had something like 500,000 people in London, but the media was reporting that they had only like 10,000 people.
18,000, yeah.
Right, but it was huge.
Huge.
Like, it was really big.
It looked like the Hong Kong protests where it just
Really, really big.
every direction. Yeah.
And then they're starting to protest in Paris now. And one of the things that I had on I talked about on my show yesterday was there was this guy named, his name is Batar, Dr. Batar. He's
Yeah, I know he is. Yeah.
Yeah, not Butter, not that guy.
Oh, okay.
This is Bhatar.
Okay.
Yeah, this guy is a professor at Exeter, which I think is in
England.
Bath. Yeah, it's in Bath, though. I think the Exeter University is in Bath. Anyway, he was essentially saying two things. Number one, people have to be able to learn how to live with being poor. But this is what he was saying, that we're essentially, society's going to take a hit because of the coronavirus. People are not going to like it. There's going to be winter of discontent, and they better plan on this so that when people are angry, they'll be able to do something with these people. But by and large, he said, people are going to have to get used to being poor. And, you know, somebody that comes from a caste system, I think that that's probably a psychology that he could wrap his head around. What was interesting is he had an image of a little statue of Shiva in the background, which is, of course, what's right outside CERN, right? Yeah. But there was, you know, and this is in alignment with the World Economic Forum, and that we're going to go through this reset, and essentially, you know, what one version of this is, and I think there are multiple versions, but one version is that they're going to wipe everything out, right? They're going to wipe it all out. They're going to do a memory wipe on history. They're going to break down this idea of being an individual, that an individual is, you know, an individual is a threat to the system. An individual is a threat to sort of the greater good. So in order to do that, they have to get rid of individuals, and they have to condition people moving forward that individualism is not a good thing. And today I read an article on my show from this woman who's a bioethicist. And it's one of the most insane articles I've ever read. And she's talking about how we don't really need a vaccine. What we need is we need a morality pill. No. And we need to be able to find a way for people to conform and to, you know, get out of their individualistic tendencies so that they can embrace the greater good. And she really cracked me up. She suggested oxytocin.
Yeah.
But then she said, well, one of the side effects that they've noticed with oxytocin is that it does develop ethnocentricities. It does favor ethnocentricity. So basically, like if you're supposedly white and you're taking oxytocin, right, you're more apt to bond with, guess what? Yeah. White people, right? Or if you're brown, you're more apt to bond with brown people, because that's what the oxytocin does, right? So it's like, well, you know, if we could use the oxytocin, but strip out the bonding for ethnocentricity. She didn't say that. That's what I'm saying, right? So like now you'd have the perfect drug.
Selective oxytocin uptake, right? Like, okay, you said a couple of interesting things there I want to respond.
Well, there's one more. There's one more point with that. One more point. Okay. She said that the other drug that might be quite helpful with breaking down, you know, this egocentric, individualistic identity is psilocybin. And I'm like, oh, great. I bet you this woman's never even taken psilocybin. Because if you take psilocybin, guess what? You don't want anything to do with the system. It won't make you more sort of system friendly. What will happen is you'll see the bullshit behind everything. And then it'll actually make you perhaps more asocial. You'll be a nicer, more well-adjusted asocial type, but it won't make you want to take one for the team.
All right, so these things are all interesting. So first of all, as to your thing that this insider said, there's something up there, like some kind of scout ship, and they shot things at it and just sort of moved away. I had a remote view a few years back, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, right? And I just suddenly, I think I had been laying down, like taking a little afternoon nap, and I never really got to the point of being asleep, but I was sort of coming out of it. And suddenly I'm sitting like in something that it looks like some kind of war room, right? There's military people and they're all looking at something that is like up on a screen, right? And it was some kind of ship that they could not figure out what the heck was going on with it, because they would shoot things at it and it would just like move or drop and turn into something else. Like it would look like it was one kind of thing, and then it would sort of move and it would be something else. And whatever they were doing at it, it would just like morph into something else. It was like a self-transforming UFO instead of a self-transforming machine elf or something, right? And
Right.
they just were beside themselves. They didn't know what to do. So when you were talking about that, you know what I mean? That's what sort of it reminded me of. And then as for your Batar guy, well, it sounds almost exactly like what the Pope is saying right now. Have you seen what the Pope has been saying the last 2 days?
Oh yeah, yeah. Same. It's the same. They're getting the AI talking points, right? That's what's happening.
Yeah. So the Pope has been saying that we all have to stop being so greedy. We have to learn to live more in harmony with the earth. We have to, all that kind of crap. But they don't mean real harmony with the earth. They mean,
They mean climate change harmony.
Green New Deal shit, right? Kind of thing. And then as for your bioethics lady, I think I either read the same or a similar article like a week or two ago, or where it was basically, we need to be able to give people something so that they'll be good. They'll start worrying about doing what's good for others instead of doing what's good for themselves, kind of thing. But I do think it's hilarious that her suggestions, I don't like the idea or the premise, but the things that she's offering as solutions don't necessarily sound all bad. Now, as far as the oxytocin causing ethnocentrism, I think they only care about multiculturalism to achieve their goal. So multiculturalism to push us to that point where we allow them to give us something to make us subdued, then they probably actually wouldn't care if we went back into our little enclaves, as long as we're all domesticated and dumb, right? I can see how there's things about that they might even prefer. It's easier to target populations if everyone is sort of similar in the same place, kind of thing, right? So I can see that there'd even be a benefit. And then as far as mushrooms go, I mean, that's hilarious. Yeah, you're right, though. If they're suggesting it, they either haven't taken them or they're aware of some GMO kind that they've created. That is, what's interesting. So I dealt with someone today who was reporting a psilocybin experience, and it didn't ring true for me as something that would happen in a psilocybin experience, right? It sounded like way too synthetic. So maybe this person got her hand on some of the GMO mushrooms that they're going to be using for this experiment. I don't know. It sounded crazy. I've never had my psychedelic experiences involve Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that, right? That doesn't sound right to me. That's not the that's not the natural internet that the mushrooms show you, right? Kind of.
So what was happening? Was she tripping on Facebook, or
the mushrooms told her that some guy she follows on Instagram was going to become an important part of her life. Right? And of course, he's some kind of Pleiadian starseed or something like that, right? So I felt like that was kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
I've never had, other than showing me that technology is modeled after them. The mushrooms don't, we all know that there's this ancient futuristic high technology there in the mushroom experience, but it never refers to the internet as we know, it never refers to this bullshit, right? I've never had that come up in anything like that. It's I forget this shit even exists when I'm on the mushrooms, right? And it could just be that the content of my mind, mushrooms tend to show you the content of your mind. That could be the content of this person's mind.
Exactly.
But I found it pretty surprising. You know what I mean? But maybe that would be a GMO kind of mushroom. I don't know, right?
Well, when I was in my 20s, early 20s, 20, 21, there was this guy who was from Chicago, and he was the mushroom king. I mean, he had the connection.
Yeah.
And my experience with mushrooms was always quite benign, very friendly, pleasant. But this guy's stash, I had a fair run with it. It was like, I was always having bad trips with this stuff. I don't know why. It was I kept going back.
Thanks. Yeah.
I kept going back saying, wow, they're beautiful looking mushrooms. Maybe that was just kind of like a, a weird bad. I kept going back and it was always the same. It always had this kind of dark vibe to it, like, very unsettling. Like it was, normally there's no kind of weird anxiety or
Nope.
hard ego death or anything, but this stuff went right up to that wall all the time. And, unlike, lysergic, you break through that, you break through the ego death, and then you wind up, going and having a great time. But so it was weird. It was just a kind of, so I think maybe there definitely is certain strains, and but also people are a product of their environment and they're a product of their thoughts, and
yeah.
So maybe that's the thing now.
There's hundreds of different kinds of strains of psychedelic mushrooms. So I have heard of people saying that there's some that are a little bit more like that. The only time I've ever had that kind of like dark, edgy, super edgy, and I've had a couple that like were maybe a little edgy to begin with, but then it broke through, or if it was edgy, it made sense. Though I had one time that was really dark, but I needed that. Like the mushrooms were basically me. Like, we have shared so much information with you and you just keep wasting your life doing drugs and not doing anything with all this stuff. Don't come back here again until you straighten your shit out.
Oh,
and I didn't go back again until I straightened my shit out. But it was the only trip I've ever had where there was literally like a net over it. And all my visuals, there was like this web in front of everything. And it just felt incredibly scary and dark and weird. And like, those like kinds of scenes in movies that are very dystopian, where it's like all black with green lights. Okay, like yours is the natural thing back there, but when you see like the old computer kind of type, like the green on the black, and and like it had that sort of edge and feel to it. It wasn't colorful like it normally was. It was just, and I got the message loud and clear, and that's the only that was me though. That wasn't the mushrooms, but that was me needing my ass kicked and getting it. But yeah, interesting. All right, shall we get on to the topics of the day?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So a story really pinged me this past week, and that's this thing going on at Sandia Labs, right? And so the headline, and I sent you the article earlier in the week or last week or whatever, and the headline is on Zero Hedge, Sandia Labs goes nuclear on employee who sparked internal revolt over critical race theory.
Yeah.
Did you see any of the stuff or any of these videos he's made or anything?
I haven't seen any of the videos, but I know about what happened and how they had to go away for the weekend, and so I know the setup, but I didn't follow any of his videos.
What do you mean had to go away for the weekend?
Well, so the lab basically took everybody. Well,
yes.
Not everybody.
Yes.
They took the white males, and they took them. They took them away
to a re-education camp. Yes.
Yeah, they went away for a weekend, and they had to, really delve into their whiteness.
Yeah.
And I think whatever he did was a result of that weekend.
Yeah. So basically, like when I saw this, before I even looked at it, like sometimes the way certain articles are written, I'm like, this is coded. Like there's something going on here that is this, but also something deeper, right? And we're just dealing with this, like, finally quieting down of all this stuff with the post office, right? And it used to be that, like, remember there was a disgruntled post office employee who went postal, right? So
that seemed to be like a weekly thing there for a while.
So I think this is the start of like the nuclear employees going nuclear, possibly, right? Mm-hmm. So basically, they're bringing Black Lives Matter and critical race theory into the workplace through HR imposed edicts and all of this kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And this kid is incredibly measured. There's nothing sort of white supremacist about him. He did a great job documenting all of this stuff and whatnot. And basically, his point was that whatever is going on, the things that they're suggesting here are all political and controversial in nature and aren't things that should be taking place at a government-funded facility, a government-funded corporate. Right. I think it's like, I don't know that it's a government agency. I think it might be a company that is government-funded. I'm not sure exactly how that breaks down. But
well, all the nuclear power plants are basically run by the NRC, which is the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, right? So they're definitely tied into the government. Like those are high level. And Sandia Labs, if I'm not mistaken, is actually where they develop things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not just a, so they have government contracts. They work for the government, essentially. That's what they do.
So here's what's really interesting about the story, right? Is he attended this stuff and read these things that they suggest they read, and he had a big problem with it, right? So he went through the chain of command to his manager and the next one, and they were actually supportive, but HR was giving him a hard time and stuff like that, and basically saying, you know, like he was saying, basically, you either need to correct these things that are wrong, or you need to allow me to teach a class that is, you know, that is saying something different or whatever, and they were giving him a hard time. So what he did was he created a video that he distributed within the internet of Sandia Labs, right, to all the employees. And he got in trouble, and they're basically saying that he has threatened the critical infrastructure security of their company by doing this, right? That doesn't make sense. How does him just creating a video threaten the internet security? That doesn't make any sense, right? And so he ended up putting this stuff up on YouTube, and so, you know, basically asking for, because he doesn't know everybody in the company, obviously, asking for others to come forward if you have, or people in other government agencies that are being forced to do this to come forward. And he's gotten a fair amount of attention, and I don't know if the reason he's getting attention is just to fight for his cause, or if because he's seeing something too. And what it feels like to me is that, so they've shut him out of his ability to access anything, right? They sort of put in new guards and walls. I don't know if he's on leave or if he's just shut out of being able to communicate with the rest of the company or whatever. But what it feels more like to me is that he was about to discover that they were doing something dirty, having something maybe totally not to do with race, right? And that they fucking like pre-crimed him, right? Kind of thing. Like, because, so, I mean, if you look at like, you know, or just setting this situation up for like, the race war emanating from a nuclear employee going nuclear, right? This picture here is from deep inside Sandia Labs. That is my background. But even when I went just to look for a background, because I had a few extra minutes, I got here and you weren't here yet, so I went looking just to see. And I found some interesting things. They're working on initiatives to protect the energy grid, right? So like, did they find what you were just talking about a little while ago, right? Maybe some asteroid, maybe they're gonna put the power down and say that it was an asteroid, but it really wasn't. They're gonna shut the energy grid, right? Like maybe they had determined that this would be a person that would find information and blow a whistle on something, right? But when I was looking up Sandia Labs, I just went into the images because I was looking for stuff like this. I'm like, this shit looks pretty weird the way it's set up. Some of the setup of the campus looks like some of the above shots you see from like Burning Man and stuff, right? But some of the projects they're looking at, you know, they're in contracts with other questionable kinds of agencies. It looks like all sorts of weird shit's going on there with different kinds of technologies. They're in certain kinds of collaborations and cooperations. The symbolism that I see there is quite unusual. I was like, there's something deeper going on here. Like in all the stories, the idea of critical race theory is highlighted in it, right? And so like one of the things I've been doing lately is looking at what some of these terms could mean besides the obvious, right? And maybe there is some sort of nuclear race going on that we're not being made aware of, right? And if this is a guy who would, whistleblow on this, maybe I understand that this race thing is being pushed throughout our government and all this kind of stuff right now, but this felt to me like this is also deeply coded for something else. Almost like this guy had to come out and make a big stink publicly about this stuff because they were fixing to set him up for something else. Is kind of what I was getting off this story. So I didn't know, I did hear in the, one of the other girls who came out with a whistleblower or whatever, saying something about that camp. That hadn't been the angle of the story that I had zeroed in on, but that's interesting that what you said. But I mean, this is crazy, some of the shit he was talking about. He has a great video where he documents everything that they were saying. This nuts. Like, I don't want my taxpayer dollars going to, pay for educating people in the company about this crap.
Yeah, well, you have to ask ask the question, like, why it's happening, who's in charge of it, who's organizing it, who's administrating it. I mean, I've been watching, I've been talking about this TV series that aired in 1987 called Amerika with a K.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been kind of referencing it in my show during the week. And I highly recommend people watch this miniseries. It's a 13-part miniseries, came out in 1987 on ABC. They aired it one time. That's it, one time. And it was never rerun ever again.
Where did you find it?
It's on YouTube.
Okay.
You can find it on YouTube, but there's no DVD box set. They had it out for a while on video. You get the VHS set, but you can't even get that now. You can get somebody who has essentially taken the YouTube videos and turned them into DVDs, which I would recommend, because I bet at some point this TV series will go away. And it is mind-blowing. So the premise of it is that it's 1987 or 1997, and there had been a series of high-altitude nuclear explosions, which take out the grid. And it's the Russians who do it. And then they come in and they basically take over the United States, although it is a long kind of haul. Like, they drop you into 10 years after that happened. So there's no Red Dawn stuff or anything like that going on. And then you get to see things inside the series that they're just mind-blowing, because a lot of what they're talking about and a lot of some of the situations that they compose, they're happening now. Like, they are happening now. And there's this one scene where the kids are at this kind of underground rock concert, right? Mm-hmm. And it's in Chicago, and it's mixed up with this kind of very agitational kind of energy, and they're talking about the Weather Underground.
Uh-huh.
And then they get all worked up, and they say, "Come on, let's go out. Let's take on the fascists. Let's get the fascists." And they go running out of this club, and then they beat the shit out of a police car. And there are these three kids who are kind of part of the teenagers, part of the group. They split off, and one of the guys says, one of the teenagers says, "I don't think that's real. I think that was all staged." And then one of the party members, one of the Communist Party members, some guy says, "Oh yeah, there was an outbreak of violence last night, so and so, and they smashed a police car." I said, "Don't worry about it. We stage that. We do that for them. We allow them to blow off some steam."
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, first of all, they're referencing Weather Underground. Second of all, it's all teens, it's all youth, and they're just going after this cop car. And in a lot of ways, it's the same thing that we've been seeing now for the last 3 or 4 months. And that's just one thing. And there's a bunch of other stuff. Like, I don't really want to give too much of it away, but there's this one event that they have, and it's a big turning point in the series. And it's a terror event. But the terror is actually orchestrated by the Soviets. And they blame it on something called the 4th of July gang. And so there's a lot of like psyops, there's false flags.
Yeah.
And there's definitely predictive programming in this thing. And one of the things that comes out of it is that the United States is broken up.
Yeah.
And it goes into regions. And in fact, there's one region that actually secedes from the United States and becomes a country inside the United States, and they call it Heartland. And it's a really interesting story.
All right, I'm gonna check it out. But
no, it's worth watching. And the thing that's fascinating about it is that it only aired one time. That was it.
That's enough. They're like,
One time.
either they did it just to put it out there intentionally, or it went on and they're like, you can't have this out there, and we can't have people knowing this. I don't know how this one slipped through the cracks, kind of thing.
I think it's both. I think they wanted to do some show and tell, and then it was like, that's it. Yeah, we don't want people really dissecting.
Same thing with these series, with like the OA, right, and some of these other series that just pop up and they're like for 1 or 2 seasons, and where people like us are watching, going, "Holy shit, they're telling the truth about that," and then the series is gone, right? Like it basically is in your face and gone, you know. And yeah, it's very. I mean.
But you could probably still see OA on Netflix, right? Didn't Netflix produce that?
You can still see OA on Netflix, yeah.
Right. Well, this was just gone. I mean, it was like nothing. You know what else I ran across? I ran across something this week that really blew my mind, and it really slipped through the cracks for me. I was going back and I was listening to a lot of like stuff from the 70s, Tower of Power. And then I went into Lenny Williams, who was a singer for Tower of Power, who I met one time, very nice guy. And then it said in his Wikipedia page, personal tragedy. I'm like, well, what? No, was it a financial tragedy or something like that? So I went in, and this is really a trip. So in 2008, Universal Studios had a fire at one of their parks. In that fire, they lost all these masters. All these masters for all these recordings are gone. Gone. So why is that?
Wasn't the fire at Universal Studios? Was it Universal, right? It was when there was a ride or a themed thing called Backdraft, which was about fires, and it set fire. Wasn't
right? So that happened. That's right.
Okay.
But the weird thing is they lost all these recordings. Yeah. The master recordings. And when you look at the names and the artists, like, you know, we got bands like Aerosmith and all these groups, right?
Yeah.
All these groups. And I'm thinking, what really happened there?
Yeah.
Like, you know, so here's what I think. I think that Universal knew that they were not going to be able, like the record industry knew that they were not going to be able to make money off the music industry the way that they were going to, or had been.
Yeah.
Before. And they burned that sucker down. And they collected the insurance money on that, on all that stuff. Because moving forward, that's 2008, 2009, like we're really starting to get into you know, sort of that you know, kind of pre-Spotify era.
Yep.
And so everything was getting, and I was actually working for an online aggregator, and we were actually buying content, and then we had deals with Apple. And that's where everything was going. And I'll be damned, I think Universal burned all that shit down. Or what they did is they probably maybe moved the masters out and then had a fake fire.
Yeah. They're probably in somebody's safe somewhere, right?
Well, there's a lot of them. And I mean, really significant amounts of music. And the thing with masters, you get into a whole legal thing with masters as well. And that if you don't own your master, if the master's gone, you technically don't own your master anymore. You don't own the master recordings. Or even if you like have, you know, some significant publishing deal or publishing clause, if the master isn't available, it probably changes the nature of the deal, right? And now there are digital recordings of that, and you say, okay, well, there's a digital recording of it.
It's not the same.
But it's not the same.
Not burnt. So isn't it also the masters? When you hear like some of these hip hop stars talking about how they do like rituals when like when they're creating the master, that is sort of like part of the selling your soul sort of ritual to sort of, you know, become a star. Those rituals and those whatever, there's a name that they say it. There was that recording where they talked about it that time. They do that with the master. Right.
Well, so what they do with like what they do with a master tape,
right,
is, you know, they may do a little abracadabra voodoo stuff over that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And who knows what else they do with it, but
Yeah.
but those are gone now. They're theoretically gone. And it's like, wow, man, I just skipped over this whole thing. But you could just tell. You could tell that they knew that they weren't going to be able to use those masters to manufacture CDs.
Yeah.
They weren't. And even if you have like a digital recording of something, it's really not the same. And
It's not the same.
and they're not going to go out and, you know, they're just going to be tons of CDs that are just going to be out of print. And if you're somebody like Lenny Williams and you wanted to buy your masters back, you can't do that.
Yeah.
They're gone. And that caught my attention. And it's like, how did I sleep on this thing? You know, it was kind of interesting, but it's, you know, I think it's sort of where we are now. And the reason I was thinking about that had to do with the DVD/VHS series that really is not existing for this show called Amerika. And I think what's going to happen is more and more of these things are just going to slip right through into the memory hole.
Oh yeah, we're being Tartarian right now for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We are in the reset right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You mentioned Spotify, and just real quick, have you heard about the controversy with Joe Rogan and Spotify?
I looked at the list. They've taken off about 50 of his shows.
Right. Any show that had anybody that was conspiratorial in nature.
That's right.
Or rightly, like, you know, more kind of alt-right-ish, or like, I mean, he never had anybody who was true alt-right on there. He only had alt-light people.
Well, they took off Jordan Peterson's daughter.
Jordan Peterson, her
Taylor
daughter.
Peterson.
They also took off a lot of the episodes that have him with his friends that have later been in charge of sex crimes and whatnot, right? But all the Alex Jones stuff is gone. All the conspiracy, like I'm curious if the Jan Irvin episode is still up there, right? But all the Milo Yiannopoulos, Gavin McInnes, any of those people, all those episodes are gone.
That's right.
And
yeah,
there's no comment from Joe Rogan about it. Now they're still available on YouTube till the end of the year, but at the end of the year, all of his stuff will be taken off of YouTube, right? So I found that it would be very interesting to know if this was a Spotify decision or if this was a Joe Rogan decision that he just let people think it's Spotify, but he really wanted to dissociate himself from these people that are, you know, have, you know, it's interesting. And Michaela Peterson tweeted at him and he didn't respond.
Yeah, so it's either Hugh. So there's three possibilities. One is that there's obscure language in the contract that Spotify was able to use in order to remove those programs, and that they couldn't do anything about it. But if you're Joe Rogan and you have Joe Rogan's money and Joe Rogan's lawyers, you don't miss anything.
Mm-hmm.
You don't miss anything. And if they do, then if you're Joe Rogan, you fire those people.
Yeah.
And they never work for you again. So there's that, or there was an agreement. Nobody knows. We don't know the agreement.
And the agreement just did not even say who wanted it. It could even have been
That's
Joe
right.
who wanted it. Yeah,
That's right.
I thought that was, you know, so history's being washed in all sorts of ways. Speaking of censorship and censoriousness, Vimeo, I got a video taken down by Vimeo. So like
that doesn't surprise me.
So they took down a video that was not even taken down off of YouTube. So like I have the first hour of my shows on YouTube, and then like the second half or the full show on Vimeo for patrons, right? So let's see if you can guess who I was interviewing. The show got taken down.
Not me.
Sofia Smallstorm.
Oh.
Right. So we did a show called the Inner Military and Adorning the Body Electric. Right. Mm-hmm. And it basically the email I got said it was taken down for like violating community guidelines or this or putting up untrue things about vaccine safety. So I don't remember us talking about vaccines in there, but she was talking about the exosome theory about viruses for
they won't allow that.
Right. So that, but I actually don't think it was for that. I think they're just using that excuse. We got into this conversation about this jewelry that is created by this artist that basically is like implanted in the body, like some sort of like download in like a trans, you know, like a something between like it's like an electric components embedded in the body kind of thing, right? Like starting to fuse the body into computer parts and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And we got deeper down a rabbit hole on that than probably anybody has been, on a video, and I actually think it's that because YouTube did not take down the first half, which was the inner military half.
Oh, right. So there was the second half.
The second half, but I think they have an excuse for the vaccine thing, so they use it. But it's been up for a long time, right? But I think that like it was a very weird and interesting show. But yeah, so all these companies, whether the companies are censoring or whether people are choosing to whitewash their own history for whatever reason, it's happening. It's completely happening. So if there's information that's interesting to you, download it now or forever, or forever hold your peace.
Right, and I would encourage people to buy books.
Yeah.
And try to get as many books as you can.
I don't even know if that works, dude. Look what happened to the Bernstein Bears. I don't even know if that works anymore, Robert.
Right.
The Bernstein Bears aren't Jewish anymore. You know what I mean?
That's right. Yeah. they've been cleansed, right, of their fallen status. Well, I don't know. It's like I still think you can. I picked up a couple books this last week. One I got was it's called Cold Times, and it's about essentially how to farm during the grand solar minimum. And I'm hoping to get the woman who wrote that book on my show.
Oh, cool.
And then I got another book, and it's called 9 Years with the Indians.
Yeah.
And it's about a boy who was kidnapped by Comanche Indians here in this area of Texas, and about what happens. So there's some books that.
Just a moment.
Okay.
Is Siri telling you what to do?
Siri just decided to turn it on. Hey, what?
Sorry,
Whatever.
So
yeah. Now I found this one book, and I don't know if you ever watched Matt Bracken. You ever watch Matt Bracken?
He sounds familiar. Who's he?
He used to be on Alex Jones a lot.
Okay,
but he's not on Alex Jones anymore. He does this show with this guy Fernando Aguirre on a weekly basis, and Fernando lives in Spain, and they live stream, and some of it is like survival prepper material.
Okay.
But Matt Bracken is a really sharp guy, and he has great information around Antifa and BLM at like a street level. And so I watched his stuff for that. He brought up this one book that he says it is the absolute best survival book guide you can get. And because it's not just what to do, but it's also like scenarios and stuff like that. Like it's a very, anyway, if you can find a copy of this book on the internet, it's $650 for this book.
Wow. What's it called?
I forget the name of it, but it's like $650 for that book. Now you can get the PDF. The PDF is available, but we're talking 300 pages, right? So It's a lot of printing. So that's why I think you should get books.
Yeah, I have a lot of books, and we buy a lot of books. I do feel like I haven't, between at the house here and in the storage, like if we lost all the internet and stuff like that, I have enough books, A, to keep me entertained, but B, also to give me most of the answers that I would need for things, right?
Yeah.
I have a wide variety of interesting books that I've collected over the years that my, family had, that, Laura had lots of interesting books, but no, I agree. I mean, this is not reliable.
No, in fact, Craig Simpson from Radiant Creators sent me a message on Skype, and Australia is now basically limiting certain types of trades with certain types of tokens on Binance.
Oh, so you can't buy cryptos and stuff?
No, they're limiting specific ones.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's right. That's right. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to see, because there's this very interesting and very rich kind of field of tokens and blockchain. Some of it's getting interesting.
Mm-hmm. The post office blockchain thing is that's kind of a fascinating move that I.
Well, I think the post office is going to run everything at some point.
Well, that is, if you remember that guy David Wynn Miller, who used to talk about parse, syntax, grammar, and all that stuff.
Right.
He basically said that the post office is part of what's been used to control the world and all. Right, like basically that's how all the massive tyranny is happening, is through the post office.
Well, yep, and they're going to run everything. The post office will be, I think, your bank.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody at some point will run their internet through the post office.
Well, Jeff had an interesting thing. He said he's like, don't you remember when the email first came around, you had to get your email address from the post office? And I was like, I guess I didn't have that early because I don't remember that. But Jeff's into that stuff. He also said that Donald Trump has a lease, and someone in your chat room said, no, he actually built a hotel there on the original old abandoned post office in Washington, D.C., right? Yep. So some of this battle could really be over, right? Like postal energetics that on a deeper level than just the post office about this election.
Oh, I think so. And again, I think through the post office, you'll have your email address through the post office. And I don't believe you'll be able to have any other email address at some point. Like everything will be tightly controlled, and the cryptocurrency will probably be through the post office blockchain. And it's looking more and more like that there are so many Ripple XRP freaks out there.
Mm.
But that's not one of the ones
that's a controlled cryptocurrency.
What's that?
That's a very controlled cryptocurrency. From what I heard, that's like one of the.
Oh, it's totally controlled. So. Of course, that's not one of the ones that was outlawed by the Australian, banking committee. There was a bunch of others. They're just saying, look, you're not going to be able to trade these.
One of the ones that is more popular amongst the underground crew, when it goes to cryptocurrencies, is not, you can't buy it on Coinbase. You can transfer funds and cash it out on Coinbase, but you can't use Coinbase to procure it. So you have to go through all these, you have to jump through a lot of hoops. Right, and this is like the more maybe the one that's backed in better moral positions than some of the other cryptocurrencies, right? So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, so I think they're making a move now to kind of purge things, and you're not just like histories, not just Joe Rogan episodes. But also things like competing cryptocurrencies. We're going through a period now where there's going to be a very kind of tight window, and not everything's going to fit through that window. And whatever's going to be on the other side of the window is what they're going to allow to be on the other side of that window. They being the social engineers.
You know what else was staged at Universal Studios?
What's that?
The Purge.
Oh, The Purge, yeah.
Like that was a big thing there. Speaking of, you were just talking about, when you were talking about this show and like the staged events and the holding of the cop car, have you seen the new headline today? And this is what's really got them. I'm like, this can't be real. Laughing cops hood and choke a black man in Rochester. And it's on video.
Oh, right.
Suspended. Like there is not a police officer in the world that would dare do anything like that right now with all the crap going on.
Well, then you had another teen, I think, shot by cops in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And this is very problematic.
Danny used that word yesterday too. I hate that word because they took the social justice warriors have totally appropriated that word.
Well, I'm taking it back. It's problematic.
Yeah.
It's problematic because
do you believe though that there's any cops out there right now stupid enough to kill to do this shit with all the crazy stuff that's going on?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
I think they let the person go rather than do this.
Well, look, I've been through the 3 significant shootings, the ones that really, lit the wick, as it were.
Right.
And the one that I always refer to is the Breonna Taylor shooting.
Right.
And, the Breonna Taylor shooting was a result of a no-knock raid. not raid with a warrant that was for the wrong place, right? So they went into the wrong place, and there were 28 bullets that were fired. 28 bullets that were fired supposedly by the Louisville PD. And Breonna Taylor was in bed with her boyfriend. Her boyfriend had a gun and was supposedly defending himself against the Louisville cops. Not one bullet hit the boyfriend. Not one.
Right. And he walked out of there with no charges.
No charges, not one bullet. And so I'm not a firearms expert. I know a little bit about firearms. And if you're going to go into a place like that if you don't know where the light switch is, guess what you're going to have? You're either going to have night vision goggles, or you're going to have a high-powered flashlight attached to your firearm.
Yeah.
And whether it's a rifle or even if it's a 45, they have rails on 45s, and you have the flashlight. So they're going to illuminate the space. They don't want to walk into a dark room, right? Because that's a disadvantage to them. They won't be able to see the people. In some ways, it's a disadvantage to them. So I could assure you that if they went in there, that they had a light on the end of one of their rifles, or they were at least one or two of those guys were rocking night vision cameras, so they didn't have to turn a light on, which means that clearly the targets would be illuminated. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely no way that one of those bullets would not have grazed, at the very least, grazed her boyfriend.
Yeah.
And that was, I'm watching these guys down in the bubble in Orlando, where they're playing the NBA. It's just ridiculous on some level. Totally ridiculous. Anyway,
it's ridiculous right now. That's kind of the last place that I wanted to go before we wrap up this one, since we've decided that we're doing a short one tonight, so we can all go to the gym or all get a workout in, right?
That's right.
The sports is insane. So I haven't been paying attention to sports because there hasn't been any that I've been interested in. I watched baseball once last week or something, and that's dumb with the fake people in the stands and whatnot. But I wasn't watching closely. But the tennis came back last week. There was they did this thing where instead of having Cincinnati in Cincinnati, they had Cincinnati in New York the week before the U.S. Open, so they could create this tennis bubble and nobody leaves there for 3 weeks and whatever, right? And so I noticed this during the Cincinnati Western and Southern. So at the side of the nets, they have these screens that advertise things, right? And it'll be like St. Jude's Children's Hospital, blah, blah, blah. Black Lives Matter, right? Like it's a product that's being sold. And the owners of the tournament, or the people, it's Western and Southern, and there's signs everywhere that say, backed by our financial strength. And I'm like, that's exactly what's going on here. Black Lives Matter is backed by the corporate power's financial strength, and it's being sold as a product. And of course, mid-tournament, you have this Jacob Blake thing, and you have the NBA athletes decide they're going to protest. So Naomi Osaka, who has been a bot her entire life, we've talked about her and how she's basically just like a clone or a cyborg, decides she's going to pull out of her match with protest. But instead, the tournament decided just to shut the whole tournament down for a day, right? So that Naomi Osaka could play, they were going to, that, oh, this is wonderful, that she's being a leader and all the athletes now have agreed and they're shutting it down for a day, and else this way she'll be able to play her semifinal match, which she won and then dropped out of the final anyway, claiming she had a hamstring injury, but she's playing fine at the U.S. Open this week, and she continues it. She's got T-shirts that say Black Lives Matter, masks that say Elijah Cummings, right? Like they have all the seats covered in the arenas in the U.S. Open with banners that say Black Lives Matter, right? Like, and it's just like, this is crazy. Like, what if there's tennis players who, and they're interviewing her about how she's inspired the other tennis players, and they're talking about how, Stefanos Tsitsipas reached out to her so she could explain Black Lives Matter to him and sort of coach him on what the right thing to think about that was. And, just the whole thing, I'm like, this is so gross. This is a person who had no personality, but somehow she found herself this summer during lockdown, and even though it was dangerous, went to Minneapolis and protested the murder of George Floyd, and now she's the most outspoken person on tour about this shit. And I'm just like, this is fucking crazy, dude.
Yeah, well, welcome to the new America, right? I mean, on some level, this is what they're trying to um, promote, institute, and again, it goes back to that TV show America with the K,
Yeah.
and it's really about social programming and social engineering. I was talking with a friend of mine who's a teacher, teaches over in Yemen, and he's a filmmaker, and I said, so I really missed out on this white privilege thing because I had nothing. My experience in my lifetime has been nothing about white privilege. Like, I didn't get to go to the Hamptons. I didn't get to go to, Cape Cod. I didn't get to go to the country club and play golf. I wasn't promoted because my uncle worked at the corporation. I didn't go to an Ivy League school. And even if somehow my white privilege would have allowed me to have access to other things outside of those things, clearly I wasn't taking advantage of it because it really wasn't there. And it's a very strange thing, really, to kind of live with in some ways. Because I've looked at my life, I'm like, well, could I have really taken advantage of the fact that I was a white male at some point and really kind of rode that rail? And I'm like, there's no way I could have done that. Number one, it's not really who I am or where I came from.
Yeah.
And number two, I wouldn't have a lot of interest in that. Like, it would be like incredibly boring for me in some ways to get a suit and get into sales and try to do whatever the version of that thing is, or become a lawyer or whatever. This is really not very interesting. So I
can imagine you in like a suit.
Well, this whole idea, right, that somehow, and we may get a lot of dislikes for this, but somehow magically people, because of their skin tone, just automatically get like carte blanche in life. I found that to be so patently not true.
Yeah.
Not true at all. And if anything, I've had to work harder in a lot of ways. Now, Joe Rogan might have some white privilege. That's a whole other story, though.
Well,
by the way, I saw a little documentary on Rogan. Some guy did. It was like a fanboy documentary, but it was actually done pretty well. And I didn't realize this, but there were like 148 episodes of that crazy show that he did. Fear Factor.
Yeah.
He did 148 episodes of Fear Factor. That's a lot of TV.
Yeah.
And that also is a lot of syndicated TV. And he said, basically, I never had to worry about money after that show.
Yeah. He does whatever he wants. But even him, he's 64 times more black than American. Elizabeth Warren is Native American, so he can't have that much white privilege.
No.
Yeah, no, this whole thing is such absolute nonsense in my opinion. Like, I feel like I've been very fortunate in my life in some ways, and also had challenges that were maybe unique to the kind of person I am or whatever. But I've had a reasonably nice life and a challenging life. Most people can't figure out from looking at me what my race is. Like, I go to one lady, like, esthetician-y kind of lady. And when I first went there the first time, she wasn't sure that I wasn't black, right? Like, I have dark skin. I have a different kind of look going on, so like, it's not like I walk around, so when people say that to me, I'm like, that's weird. But I don't go around thinking, well, I'm white, so I should be able to do stuff or get stuff or whatever. And maybe in some ways that's what their point is that it's not even something that I would consider. But I'll say this, like, according to the like oppression Olympics, intersectionality, like the more, categories you're in of things that would make you a minority in some way, the more whatever, right? Like, I have at least 2, possibly 3 things that would count me, like, intersecting various things. I've never felt oppressed or like I've lost opportunities or anything because of those things. The only thing that I've ever felt judged unfairly for it, and maybe you can't even say it's unfairly, and I don't really care either way, is that I think a different thing about reality. that I have a more conspiratorial in nature kind of thought, or that I don't see, I don't buy the mainstream narrative. That's the only thing I've ever felt like people judge me harshly for. Never any of the things that are normally counted, as that kind of stuff. And so to me, that it's just, I don't know. It's like racism in the name of anti-racism. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it doesn't work for me at all. And I mean, from what I understand about your life, it seems like you had a pretty hard growing up.
Yeah, it was.
Nobody got any money, did you? You guys didn't have any money when you were a kid.
No.
Yeah.
No, money was hard to come by.
And you were dragged around from place to place to place. Like, I've heard you say that you lived in like at least 30 different places.
Well, that was like, kind of aggregate. But there was one period between 1968 and 1972 where I went to 6 different schools.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that was due to moving, and some of it was due to like redistricting. But that was, those were, yeah, we went through, a lot of people in the United States, during the 1970s went through difficult times. It was not a really easy era in some ways. In some ways it was really easy.
Well, and also your white privilege hasn't afforded you any safety from some of the things you've been struggling with for the last several years in the court systems and things like that. Being white hasn't helped you with that at all.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not really going to get into that too much.
Don't get into that.
But I think that has actually more to do with being a male.
Yeah.
Than having any sort of ethnicity attached.
I think white males are actually at this point more under, like, that's the people under the most true attack right now.
Well, yeah, because it's a symbol of individualism, and there will be no individualism.
Well, the belief in rugged individualism.
The belief in rugged individualism, there will be none of that. That's that. And in fact, this is one of the things that comes through again in that series Amerika with a K. They talk about how this idea of rugged individualism is basically, toxic, and it's a lie, and it leads to only caring about one's self and and one's own fortune, and which is contrary to the greater good. And then there's an actual scene in a school where they are re-educating the kids. Mm-hmm. And that actually comes up. Yeah. And it's social Darwinism. This is what they're teaching the kids, and the evils of it. So yeah, they don't want any of that because they don't want any competition.
Well, like, they want Darwin's theory of evolution, but not social Darwinism.
Right, exactly. They want evolutionary theory, but not.
Oh, speaking of, that's the last thing. I know we're just about out of time, but tracking the whole unity thing, right? So it's been interesting. They're doing every single move I thought they would do, right? He's interviewed Dan Crenshaw. He's interviewed Jesse Ventura, which, right? Like, they're when they name possible candidates, it's always like Andrew Yang, Tulsi Gabbard, blah, blah. Yeah, that's because that's really like getting General McCraven, because that's really getting rid of corruption, right? Picking 2 people that rolled over and supported Joe Biden, right, ultimately, or a person who pulled off like one of the biggest false flags ever and then killed most of the SEAL team to cover it up. These are good people to end corruption. But do you know what the last video I saw of theirs said on the bottom? I don't know if you've been tracking this thing that Misaki has been following, but I've gotten better at tracking it. I catch it sometimes where he doesn't. This whole Umu thing, out of many one, mm-hmm. right? The little Tokyo Cube. That was literally the title of Brett's last Unity Campfire podcast, Out of Many One, right? Mm-hmm. And this goes to the Twin Towers and the 2 towers now being one, and blending all these world religions like we've talked about with like Baha'i or some of this other kind of stuff you and I've gotten into before, right? So all of this stuff that we've been like, they're going to do this, they're doing it all. They're literally following the playbook that apparently you and I wrote for them.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was really interesting because we talked about them before, and mm-hmm. then I started to watch their videos a little bit, like Brett and Eric, and then I started. And then Brett was on Tucker Carlson. I'm like, well, hold on a second. I know where this is going.
Mm-hmm.
I know where this is going, and this is going to be if they're not successful with a full-on Bolshevik overthrow of the U.S.,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't think they will be. I don't think they will be. But it'll be very close, and it'll be very, very damaging. Be very damaging. Damaging the economy, damaging to individuals, damaging to families. People will be weary. Like, we've been in a war really probably since 2000. You know, there was a war that was started by Bush, and the continuation of the war went on with Obama, and still gone on with Trump, and it's gone through different phases, but we've been in a war, and a lot of people are very tired.
Mm-hmm.
They're very tired, and they want respite. They want rest. They want to be able to just live their lives. So I think it will continue to get borderline catastrophic, and then they'll bring in something else that'll be, oh God, oh, this is great. Oh my God, this is so good. Yes, this is such a relief. Oh, these, you know, these are not polarizing points of view, because it doesn't matter if you're on, you know, Team Trump or you're on Team Biden. Those are very polarized camps. So you've got your unity people, you know, kind of, you know, coming up the middle on this thing.
Have you seen the symbols that they have for the Unity Party? Let me see if I can pull it up real fast. So Unity 2020. So one of them is like a torch, like a burning thing, right? And then there's been a few that I'm like, oh, this is, let's see. Let me see if I can find the one that I was looking at. Huh, I can't find, this is weird. It's like, this is so weird. There's none of this on, when I Googled Unity. All right, let me try Unity, Brett Weinstein. This is weird. I saw an image the other day that was like, I was like, wow, that is really putting it right in your face. Well, there's a bunch, I guess he had a contest, right? So I'm seeing some of these up here, but I'm not seeing the one that I think that they actually decided to go with. All right, if I can find it, I'll use it. I'll find a way to include it so people can see it. But you know, they're doing exactly what we said they were going to do, and we still. I mean, this Joe Biden thing is oh, did you hear this article? Like Tim Pool was talking about it today, that they ran like a war game of the almost options of the thing, right?
And Podesta came in and basically, you know, flipped everybody out.
But basically what it was saying is the only scenario they ran in which there wasn't violence and chaos and whatever is if Joe Biden wins by a landslide, right? Every other possible situation, there will be violence. And Tim Pool had a good point. He was basically saying this is like the power system and the left's way of basically trying to threaten people like into voting for Joe Biden. Yeah. But it turns out that this exercise was supposed to be balanced with players from the right and from the left. Every single right person who was part of the exercise was an anti-Trumper and never Trump, right? So it wasn't even, go check out Tim Pool's videos and stuff from today. Yeah, so there's still a part of me that thinks that this unity thing could actually even end up playing a part somehow in this one. If there is, quote unquote, maybe there'll be an event between 9/16 and 9/23. I mean, that's what, when Brett and Eric had their original podcast where they were really hammering this out, they said, we're going to build this ship. We're going to build this ship just in case the flood comes.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, and they're buddy with George Soros. And so, you know what I mean? He has the ability to fund any one of a number of, or there's others like him. It's not just always Soros or whatever. Right.
Well, they got Peter Thiel.
Peter Thiel. Mm-hmm.
Who's pretty wealthy.
Right. So it's just like, you know, the way that they've talked about it leaves me believing that there's something they know is coming. So they're preparing the interception machine.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think they're, yeah. And I think, you know, we targeted this thing early on. And
they're drafting Articles of Unity too. They have a website now called articlesofunity.org. Mm-hmm. Right? So like,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think they had Matt Taibbi on the other night.
Matt Taibbi? Yeah, you know what is weird? Yeah, Brett had a conversation with Matt Taibbi and then didn't talk with him about anything really worthwhile that Matt Taibbi's been writing about. Because Matt Taibbi's actually been doing a pretty bang-up job at exposing how ridiculous the left has become. But Brett didn't get into any of the really interesting stuff with him. He just kept it more in the synthesis lane, right?
Right. Well, that's their talking point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they have to keep sort of driving their talking point home so people know what they're talking about and understand their concept and understand that they are the more rational, palatable bridge between, these polarized points of view.
I think it would be terrible.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just government on another level.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really want to kind of change the script, I mean, the federal government should really be doing just a handful of things. Number one, defend the borders. Number two, work out overseas treaties. Number three, basically, oversee interstate commerce and trucking and distribution. And then four, have a standing army. And that's really all it should do.
Mm-hmm.
Really all it should do. And then everything else should be left up to the states, and that the states would then give the federal government a portion every year. They have a budget to run those things, right? And the states come together, and that's it. That's it. And they can't come back and ask for more. There's a budget that's laid out. And, if you're a small state, I guess you give what you can. I don't know what the answer to that is, but then you let the states kind of run there we go.
So look at this art. Their art is getting more and more, high end here. But so this is the episode with Jesse Ventura, and but this is their one of their logos with the little sort of campfire kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. No.
Well, this thing right here.
Which thing?
Is that the flame by Jesse Ventura?
Yeah.
Right. To me, that looks very Jewish. Right.
Well, this is a very Jewish movement. There's
never
any criticism of Israel ever.
Yeah. To me, this is like, I would see this kind of symbol at a Jewish synagogue or temple somewhere.
Yep. Let's see if there's just a regular. I haven't seen. This is a different. Apparently there's a game called Unity 2020, which that's interesting too. Just the juxtaposition of the idea that we live in a simulation, that there's like a massive video game called Unity. That's kind of interesting. Yeah, I can't find the one I'm thinking of. If I find it, I'll put it on something. But yeah, this stuff is super interesting. I do think I'm getting close to the 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel here. So just if everybody who watches this show subscribes to the YouTube channel, because we get always more than 1,000 views on it, then I will have over 1,000, and then we can live stream and we can do our Mashcast IRL, and we can pretend we're at Team Tool and analyze it.
What happened to that guy? Did it show like
Adam? So
Adam.
did like 2 shows, and he's just doing it like once a week now, I think, or something like that, or a couple times a week. And he's like, oh, well, I don't even really know if I want to podcast anymore. I'm more interested in my music and this and that. So I might do 1 deep dive a week. But then I saw him on with Karlin Borsenko the other day, and she has a podcast she does with a friend of hers who's an astrologer, kind of like what you and I do, right? And the astrology guy was doing Tim's chart, Adam's chart, and was trying to explain how, like because of your chart, it explains why that would never have worked and da-da-da. But I think it's going to die out quickly. Right? Like, he can't do it without Tim. He just doesn't, he's better at bouncing off of someone else. Like, Tim comes with the stories, and then Adam talks about his opinion. It's a lot of work. You know what I mean?
Well, Tim, it's clear Tim is a really bright guy. He's a very bright guy.
Yeah.
And no matter if he's an agent for Trump at this point, he's still a bright guy.
You know what? He never talks about this Unity stuff. Ever. I've never heard him bring it up one time.
He's acknowledged them once or twice, but he doesn't. That's not part of
part of his deal.
His deal. No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. So apparently that Adam guy got into a conflict with the woman.
Oh.
And that's what happened.
I didn't hear this.
Yeah. What's her name? Lydia. Lydia. He got into a conflict with Lydia. There was, I think that's Tim's girlfriend.
Okay, I was like, is that Tim's girlfriend or his handler or both?
No, I think it's his girlfriend. So Tim had to choose
Interesting.
Lydia or Adam. So he chose Lydia. And the bromance is no more.
No, but it hurt both of them. Like the numbers that they were pulling in terms of people actually showing up for those live streams were incredibly high, more than 100,000 people sometimes watching at a time, right? Yeah. And the literally thousands and thousands of dollars per podcast, not counting anything where they may donate on PayPal or be his subscriber on Subscribestar or cryptos or any of that shit, just throwing money at them for, you know, like whatever, right? Like just in the super chat, right? Like I watched, I didn't pay close attention to super chats before this, the amounts, but I've been watching what some of the other popular live streamers who do super chat pull in. This was the most I had ever seen. I've never seen anything like it, right? So, you know, it's interesting that they were both, that it was whatever happened was enough for everyone to walk away from that. But I think that Tim may have an endless supply anyway, so it may not matter to him.
Yeah, I think Tim Pool's probably doing just fine.
Yep. All right. So hopefully soon we'll be able to do our little live stream in our super chat.
Since I was banned from doing super chats on
so we
my
have
channel a long time ago.
Yes, so we'll hope that I'm able to stay in the super chat good graces so that we can play some fun games. And, you know, I don't know if it should be Mashcast IRL or Jaspercast IRL. What do you think?
Either one's fine with me.
Yeah, we can get beanies. We can put beanies on our cats. Maybe somebody can create us some funny logo or something like that.
I have a beanie. I could wear a beanie.
I have one too. I have a couple. I have a great one.
I have 2 beanies.
Awesome. All right. We can.
Yeah. Oh, hey, can I just plug the event?
Yes, please. Yes. Go ahead.
So last year we had an event. I had an event here in the Hill Country, Texas, in a town called Kerrville, and I think about 45 people showed up, and it was great. It was at a hotel in Kerrville. Emily was there, and Laura made her world debut there, and it was a great weekend. We did the Friday Farcast. Emily did a great presentation on sugar is programmable matter, and we had a bunch of activities, live concert. We went to Enchanted Rock, and it's happening again October 1st. And I know it may be a little on the late side, but flights are still incredibly cheap.
Incredibly cheap, and Airbnbs are actually reasonable too. The hotel rooms are reasonable, all that stuff.
Hotel rooms are fine, they're great. So this year we're going to be back there, same place again. We're going to be doing a Matrix Mash live from the event, and that will be a panel Matrix Mash where we're going to be looking at, you know, our version of reality and what we might be able to sort of dream up or create. That is not unity, that is not on the right, that is not on the left. So we're trying to forge our own sorts of visions and manifestations. So we'll be talking about that. Our friend Masaki will be there, and he will be doing a live presentation on global pyramid power, like this whole network of pyramids all around the planet. So he's going to go into specific locations. We'll talk about their dimensions. It's going to be very cool. I'll be doing a presentation on what I call the astrology of the reset, and we're looking at really fall of this year, 2021, 2022, and then 2024. Those are the big phases, big time cycles that I'll be looking at. And then we're going to have a lot of activities, a lot of fun. And we're going to go out to a ranch and have a good old Texas kind of barbecue hoedown thing. I got a secret event planned. And guess what? Masaki is a DJ, and he goes by Akaida. So we're going to flip on the black lights, and Akaida is going to rock the decks under the full moon. And the hotel has pools. It's some of the best weather in Texas. That last week in September, first week of October, it's still really warm, but not blistering warm. So anyway, Emily will leave a description. She'll leave a link.
I will leave a link
and sign up for it. And right there, it'll go to my website. Everything you need to know is right there, including being able to get your hotel room and pay for the event. And we need to get it wrapped up by September 10th. Okay, so we've got 7 days. You got a week. You're on the clock. if you want to do this, and it's worth it. Trust me, it'll be worth it.
And you know how a few weeks before they go to Burning Man and a few weeks after they have like the pre-burn and the after-burn parties? Well, we'll be having a pre-party with Masaki at Conspiracy Cocktail this weekend too. We'll be talking about different stuff. We'll be talking about cones and, you know, pyramid tech, like using the pyramids now as like a future kind of technology, his kind of pyramids and stuff. So come join us for the Harvest, is it Hill Country Harvest pre-party at at Conspiracy Cocktail. This will probably go out tomorrow, yeah, they'll be on Saturday this weekend. So it's this Saturday. This Saturday is September 5th, right? So you can catch us there for a little pre-party, a little preview of what you might get in Texas. But join us, and it was an awesome time last year. We're really looking forward to coming back. And the coolest part about it all is just to get to hang out with the crew, with the Chatlandia crew, and with Robert, and just get to be with like you know, you're always the weird one. We're always the weird ones wherever we go, right? And just you get to be with an entire crew of weirdos this time, so you get to be yourself and let it all hang out, and it's a good time.
Yeah, and it really is. And a lot of people who were there last year are going to return, and we've got some new people showing up, and
some people driving an awful long way to come. So, yeah.
We've got some people that are one gal's coming from Washington, stopping in Montana, and then picking somebody up, and then driving down to Texas from
I know
Montana.
People coming from Utah, Las Vegas, California, people driving, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're flying, but I know people being willing to drive all that way. So
I'll be driving as well. So
anyway, you're 20 minutes from Fredericksburg. All right, guys, that'll wrap it up for number 30. We'll be back in just a couple of weeks. You can find him
number
at
25. Number 25. This is 25.
Oh, yeah, sorry, 30. I did 30 yesterday with Danny on work.
I want to celebrate our silver anniversary
Yes.
Before we get to 30.
I did number 30 with Danny yesterday. Danny and I hit number 30 yesterday.
You've done more shows with Danny than me.
Yeah, I think that started with Danny about the same time I started with you, but I think we've just been a little bit more consistent with every other week when you and I sometimes spread them out.
Right.
We've been pretty consistent lately. So this wraps up number 25. We've had our silver anniversary. I can't wait to celebrate with you in a few weeks, Robert. And we'll be back in a couple weeks with another show. You can find him at robertphoenix.com, and you can find me on Facebook at Emma Moyer, right here on YouTube, or at patreon.com/offplanetmedia. We will see you next time. Bye, Robert. All right.